Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, April 12th, 2026, as we record this show. The Chicago White Sox split their 4-game series in Kansas City, which is very remarkable. They ended that 14-game losing streak on Thursday, winning 2-0 in Kansas City, their first win in Kansas City since 2023, and then didn't score a run the next 2 games before holding on for dear life to win the Sunday finale 6-5. Now the White Sox are 6-10 on the season, and the pitching staff doing a much better job of keeping opposing offenses at bay. The White Sox are getting a big boost to their pitching staff. Top pitching prospect Noah Schultz is joining the team and making his MLB debut Tuesday night against Tampa Bay. We'll preview Schultz's start and recap the White Sox action from Kansas City later in the show. But first, let's hear from White Sox manager Will Venable as he sums up his team's performance this weekend.
It was an interesting series there where obviously runs were tough to come by there for both teams in the first 3 games, and obviously that last game or today, a little bit of a different dynamic. But just for our guys to continue to push, to continue to stick with the program, continue to work hard. The pregame work was outstanding. These guys, especially after a delay where it's just kind of a funky day, funky game, we're just really proud of the group.
The White Sox offense will be a big focus of this podcast, but Tanner Murray had his first MLB hit on Saturday with a single, and then on Sunday hit his first Major League home run.
Like I said, I'm glad I was into the boys in the bullpen too, which is cool, and to kind of get things going, and thanks to Colson for battling with 2 outs to get that double before me, so fun times all around. I knew I hit it decent. I mean, I haven't hit too many homers to really know off the bat, but I was just happy it didn't get caught. I don't care how it happened, if it went over the wall or not. It didn't go in someone's glove, so that was a good thing.
Colson Montgomery hit his 3rd home run of the season on Sunday. He's feeling good with how the team split the series in Kansas City, especially when he and his teammates are trying to get comfortable.
Felt great, the last couple of days, we've just been right there, and we were just a couple at-bats away, a couple, innings of zeros, just all around a way of, just being right there, and coming out with more wins. But, Royals are, it's a good team, good pitching staff, and so for us to kind of scratch out, kind of a grindy win today, back and forth, things like that. Skip, some of the mound visits, he's like, hey, it's just going to be one of those kind of games. Let's just stay in there. Let's just keep doing what we do. And, credit to everybody, the bullpen guys, just like the little things like Chase, having a bunt, get a guy over, and then it's pass ball, things like that. So there's just things like that we're going to have to do, to win. And I thought it was pretty good.
What's kind of the process been of getting more and more comfortable in your approach where you're locked in today and jumping on first pitches?
Yeah, I think it's just staying committed to my plan and where I'm looking, and kind of not getting off that. There's times where you're trying to figure out how they're pitching you and things like that, and you get away from what you want to do, and I say that all the time, and I feel like that's just sometimes when I get off my game, it's not too worried about what they're going to throw me, where they're going to throw me, and things like that, or kind of try to cover too many pitches or zones. And it's like, dude, you just got to simplify it, look in one spot, be ready for the one pitch you're looking for, and just put your best swing to it. I feel like not even just me today. There was a couple guys, who stepped up and did all that.
Will Venable was happy with how the offense looked on Sunday, hoping that this level of production sticks around more often.
Yeah, they bounced back, and love to see that. Where really every guy on the field contributed, whether that was defensively or offensively. Just one of those wins where everyone did something positive to help the team win. So, feel good about it, and that's what this is, right? You stay the course, you keep pushing, and the guys did a great job doing that today.
Now joining me on the Sox Machine podcast as James Fegan, our beat reporter, is heading home from Kansas City. Again, huge thank you to all of our Sox Machine supporters that allow us to send James on the road as he is fighting bad weather, heading home, so hopefully he gets home safely. But it's the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margulis. And Jim, we knew that the news of Noah Schultz and eventually other top prospects for the White Sox like Hagen Smith and Tanner McDougal, that they would be joining the Chicago White Sox sooner than later. You got a chance to see Noah Schultz in person when the Charlotte Knights visited the Nashville Sounds. With the news that Noah Schultz is joining the Chicago White Sox and making his first start on Tuesday, how do you feel about this promotion?
It makes sense, especially with Shane Smith's being big shoes to fill based on what he provided last year, based on Jonathan Cannon. We'll see how much the hip was the issue, just because he wasn't throwing all that well in Charlotte, and the spring was kind of unremarkable, so it's hard to know exactly what state he's in, independent of the injury. But yeah, once you get past Cannon, it's pretty much either Duncan Davitt as far as guys on the 40-man roster, and I like him, and I think he's still developing in terms of his arsenal. His changeup looks better, so he should have a better approach against lefties, but he's still figuring it out. So really, you start getting into that core of Schultz, Smith, McDougal. We talked about it before the season, who would be called up first. And I didn't think Schultz would, but based on the way he's been throwing, it's basically unimpeachable what he's doing right now in terms of throwing strikes, in terms of handling righties, which he didn't do last year. With the 5-pitch arsenal that he has now, the cutter looks a lot better than it did last year. The slider is back to being a slider, not a curveball. It's got its sharpness back. The high four-seam fastball is a bigger part of his arsenal. So he really has a plan of attack for lefties and righties. And I would say at least 2 times through. Just a matter of being able to do it against Major League hitting and see if they stress test him in a way that AAA hitters haven't been. But just pouring tons of strikes. He's so efficient that he isn't really able to throw his changeup much because the innings are over before he even gets to a point where it makes sense to try it. So yeah, I think he's at the point where, given that he's from Oswego and given the first round pick, given how little the White Sox have going for them in terms of, excitement, I think it's probably easy to, I'd say maybe get too excited or just, have unrealistic expectations for a rookie who's trying to figure it out. Because, no matter how hyped a prospect is, sometimes it takes a while to figure it out. But based on what he did at AAA, with the arsenal that he's expanded in a hurry, now that he's healthy from the knee problem, yeah, sure, give it a look, see what happens. If they have to send him down because there's something catching, then sure, you can do that. But I think now's the time, while he's healthy and fully functional, to learn exactly what that gets you. And then as hopefully Chris Getz pivots to a contender, you start learning, one, if Schultz can withstand the workload and rigors of a major league season, and then if he can, what kind of impact might he provide? And then is he somebody you build around, or is it somebody you build with?
So when it comes to Schultz, let's start with the arsenal. For those that haven't gotten a chance to watch Noah Schultz, whether that's on the stream, Jim, or they weren't like you, they haven't seen him in person, what should they expect? What is the bread and butter for Noah Schultz?
Well, it's interesting, in terms of how different he's looked this time around. The bread and butter, I would say, without a doubt, entering the season was sinker slider. It was mostly sinker slider. He got fewer strikeouts than you think somebody who is 6'10" and throws, 96, 97 would get, but just a lot of ground balls and weak contact early in the count. So he didn't get to as many 2-strike counts as you might think a pitcher like him might. As he climbed up the ladder and then he had the knee problems last year, he started having to think like, well, he needs a cutter or he needs a changeup. And right now the cutter looks pretty good. Like he's throwing it anywhere from like 87 to 93. And I talked to him after his start in Nashville, and he said like, yeah, that's part of the inconsistency right now is, getting, it seems to get, more velocity into it as the start goes on. And he'd like to figure out like the feel for it earlier because he wants it in the 90s as much as possibly can be. And then, I didn't get to see the changeup much, but apparently he likes it. Talked to Charlotte pitching coach Scott Aldred. He likes it. So, whether it's something he shows in first 3 innings or something he shows third time through, I guess we'll see what the future of that pitch is. But, Aldred said he's a 5-pitch pitcher when last year was hard to identify exactly what his third pitch might be. And that's a lot of progress in a hurry.
So this is the first instance we'll talk about this, but I'm sure we will bring this topic up 3, 4, maybe 5 times as the season progresses. And that is going to be the workload for Noah Schultz. So starting early, Jim, he is getting to start on Tuesday against the Tampa Bay Rays. What is a reasonable expectation for Noah Schultz in his debut start? Is it a certain pitch count or just how many times he can get through the lineup?
I would say, assuming, standard efficiency, that, the ups and downs are more what the White Sox are paying attention to than pure pitches. We saw this in his start or so far his starts the season, capping out at 5 innings, no matter how many pitches. I think he threw like 50 pitches in one start and he was, done after 5. And talking to him at the start at Nashville, when I saw that his cutter was getting up to like 91, 92, 93, I asked him if he was just like letting it rip because he knew he was approaching a finish line and thought, okay, he's emptying the tank, doesn't have to conserve anything. He thought, no, I didn't know this was my last inning. That's what he told me anyway, is that he just was going out there acting like a starter who was going to go longer because I think he finished with 72 pitches. And sure, yeah, that's like a normal 6 to 7 inning pace based on, what a pitcher who has at least like a full major league season under his belt might throw. So I would expect 5 innings, unless he's like super efficient, like, 10 pitches or fewer per inning. But I would hope that, once they get his feet wet, once they see how he responds to a 5-day schedule, and learning, whether the stress of facing major league hitters, adds to the wear and tear in his recovery and such, I would hope that within short order, they're letting him go 6, especially if he's as efficient or anywhere as efficient as what he's shown in AA and AAA when he's healthy. Birmingham is the same thing, like 10, 11, 12 pitches per inning, and he was done. And so I think, the strength of having that is that you are able to go into inning 7 versus expecting a 5 to 6 inning start. I think they have to be a little bit careful just because, I think the most he's thrown when including postseason starts is 91 innings. But I would hope that like 120, 130 would be, if he's going well and recovering well and the metrics look good and the release point looks good and they're not seeing any kind of additional strain or compensating in his delivery, that, they just let him go kind of what that would be Tanner McDougal territory last year. Christian Opper, he kind of had the same thing of just they eased him down, but then like as he showed that, in both cases, as they show that they were looking strong in the season, they ramped it back up and let him throw an extra inning. Like I would hope that even if they do try to have some governors in place, that if he's throwing well and recovering well and, not to increase expectations or anything like that, but making it look in the event that he's making it look easy as he has at stretches in the high minors, that they do explore that space a little bit and say, all right, how does a 6th inning look? How does a 7th inning look? Even if they, try to have to be careful about it or wait for there's an extra day of rest afterwards. There are ways to plan it, but I hope that they do if Schultz said he's good for it.
Okay, so like with 75, 80 pitches against Tampa Bay, would that be reasonable expectations?
I would say, yeah, if he's, because I would say 5 innings and 80 pitches would be, at least one high stress inning in there, if not two. So that's probably what they're paying attention to. But I would be surprised if he went more than 5 innings, no matter what his pitch count was, unless somehow he was like through 5 and 39 or something like that. But
Okay.
based on the White Sox having a day off before that in the bullpen, even though they use 9 pitchers, should be fairly rested. That I don't think they would push him unless you just somehow were the innings were too easy and to the point where like up and downs weren't necessarily going to get him where he needed to go in terms of building his workload for his next start.
Well, it was only 3 appearances for Noah Schultz with the Charlotte Knights this season, covered 14 innings. 2 of those were starts. He piggybacked off the opening day game with Hagen Smith. 19 strikeouts in 14 innings, only allowed 4 hits, 1 home run, and he only walked 2 batters.
And no hit batters either.
He's ready to go.
Yeah,
Noah Schultz is ready to go. And I put this on social media, Jim. And again, he pitched in Charlotte last year. He threw 16 innings. So this is a total of 30 innings for Noah Schultz at AAA. There's a part of me that moving forward for these top pitching prospects, Hagen Smith, Tanner McDougal, I'm putting them in the same pile, Jim, that they treat Charlotte as a ramp up, keep it to 25 innings, because if you can prove your worth and you can take the ball every 5th day in Birmingham, I think you have learned enough lessons to be ready to take on a full starter's workload of the major leagues. That ramp up for Charlotte is just making sure that everything looks good physically. You can get quadruple A hitters out without issue. All right, let's use the rest of your bullets in the majors. And it does lend to this, back to the theory of there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. So from my perspective, I do like how the White Sox are calling up Noah Schultz, even though pitching hasn't been the problem the last 9 games. We'll talk about that in a second. But I do like, even though it does seem like this is aggressive, I like this. If he's going to be limited in how many innings he's going to throw this year, I'd rather be in the majors, Jim, than in Charlotte.
Yeah, I think last year, yeah, and I assume like that you mean 30 innings if everything looks good, that there aren't any massive struggles.
Well, he only pitched 16 innings last year in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And then 14 this year. So it's only 30 innings in his AAA career.
But in terms of like the ramp up, I assume you mean like things are going well. And so like it's, like in case of last year, he had significant platoon splits. Like the cutter wasn't working the way they thought. Maybe not as much as a standalone pitch, but it was, they said it was affecting his slider, making it slurvy, curvy. And righties were teeing off on him in a way that never had been a problem before. Like he always had, distinct splits because the left-handed angle is just so tough and the slider is just so tough that you're not going to expect A-ball hitters to hang in on a lefty who's throwing the ball from like where the second baseman stands, basically.
Right.
So like he always had some definition of splits, but righties didn't hurt him that much. And then he got to Charlotte last year and like there was like a 900 OPS or something like that against him. And so that was a sign that like something's not right. And so that's a case where either, and we saw this with Davitt is one, McDougal. This is kind of what I'm looking for with him as he starts throwing, like he threw a lot of strikes against Memphis. Like, and as long as he's throwing strikes, he's in this call up conversation as well. But McDougal had kind of pronounced splits against lefties. So if he's doing okay on the surface, but lefties are kind of giving him a tough time, then I think maybe you extend the ramp up period to see, work on a changeup more, work on whatever pitch you're using to counter lefties or righties if you're a lefty. Just to, because at the major league level, when there are more platoons, because that's something pitchers might not see at AAA is guys getting platooned or platoons being plan A versus, the bottom of a AAA order. He might face, if he's facing like the Cleveland Guardians, like 7-8 lefties, if he struggles against lefties, in the case of McDougal. And then, teams might be able to stack righties on Schultz. So I think that's something that is worth paying attention to at AAA. But in the case of Schultz, like he was dominating everybody. Everybody's hitting like 100 off him. So yeah, they weren't challenging him enough. And, might come a point in his major league development to where, that changeup's got to get better, or that,
sure,
that cutter isn't enough. You need to really get back to getting grounders because like they're finding the barrel more with major league hitters. There might be different ways to where like the pitch mix doesn't quite work and you might have to go and workshop it in AAA, but that would be more of a point of going down to AAA and just repping a pitch more, throwing changes when you don't have to, just to hammer it home versus getting it hammered in the major league level. But that's all, speculative right now. Tuesday should be very exciting just for high upside talent. Like it's fun watching this rotation over the last week or so, get outs. But they don't have that guy who bullies hitters the way that like Smith, when he was functioning, Shane Smith, when he was throwing like at his peak form last year, did just with his fastballs. Like he just made innings over in a hurry because they were always on the defensive. I think Schultz gives the White Sox rotation that pitcher, assuming that he makes a clean enough transition to the majors, that he's the guy who will, among this rotation, that will make hitters truly uncomfortable.
Well, it is going to be must-see TV for White Sox fans Tuesday night with Noah Schultz facing Tampa Bay. It's also $5 Tuesday, so many of the concession stand items are $5. Nachos, hot dogs, some beers like a 12-ounce Modelo is $5. So if you want to be in person to see Noah Schultz, make sure to go to whitesox.com/tickets to see what tickets are available. And yeah, come to the ballpark. Watch Noah Schultz. If you can't make it, make sure you watch along with everybody else and you're in the first pitch post on SoxMachine.com sharing your thoughts about Noah Schultz at his MLB debut. But it's very exciting, and that's going to be a continued theme of this season to see more and more MLB debuts for the Chicago White Sox.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Now, switching gears, recapping what we saw this past weekend in Kansas City. And really, when you look at all four games, a very weird series. The first three games, identical scores, 2-0. White Sox won the first game 2-0. They lose the next two games by a final score of 2-0. Very maddening, getting shut out back-to-back games, not good. And then Sunday, it got weird. The White Sox won 6-5. The game-winning run. Wild pitch offense, baby. Love to see that.
Oh, yeah.
Tanner Murray, congratulations in this series. Not only did you get your first MLB hit, but you also got your first MLB home run. Colson Montgomery had a big 2-run homer for the Chicago White Sox. And even with the 1-run lead and on pitcher number 7 in the game, Jordan Leisure, Lucas Sims, and Sir Anthony Dominguez were able to hold the 1-run lead. That's new. And the White Sox pick up another 1-run win on the season. And Jim, going to Kauffman, knowing that you've lost 14 consecutive games there, only scoring 17 runs in those 14 games. And to come away this weekend with the series split, I think that's a big win for the White Sox. How do you feel about the White Sox and their performance against the Royals?
Yeah, I think a split is a victory. Even if like the run differential were like 45-3, they would still have to feel pretty good about coming away with 2 out of 4, assuming that like the no pitchers were harmed in the filming of those episodes. But yeah, it's a case where the offense is just rough in terms of both the way they look, but also like name brand value. You look up and down the lineup and you look at like I saw Dustin Harris in Charlotte last week. And all of a sudden, like he's a big part of things on a platoon basis, like Tristan Peters. Nobody's really talking about him during spring training. He makes the roster. He's now the kind of 1A or very heavily used fourth outfielder, and maybe like 1A in center field. especially when Edgar Caro isn't hitting from the catcher side, like that's, you're expecting B plus contributions from catchers and they're not there. So it's really comes down to the average hitters from last year. Vargas, Mydroth, Montgomery's better than average, but in terms of average or better, I should say. And then Murakami, don't know, but like it's kind of 4 hitters who, Montgomery can run hot and cold, and the others are more or less high floor, low ceiling types. And then you get real fuzzy with trying to get the platoon advantage. So it's just a challenging setup right now. And I think the pitching showed up to where that kept it competitive. Had it been the form of pitching that showed up at the start of the season against Milwaukee and Miami, this could have been a wholly different series. And you're talking about 17 straight losses or 18 straight losses if the game 4 didn't go the same way. And I would think like the butterfly effect would have some say in that, not being as weird as it was. But yeah, they're surviving at Kauffman with 2F4 is they have to tread water right now. And that looks like treading water to me.
What is fascinating to me, and I saw this posted on social media, that the White Sox team ERA in the last 10 games is below 2. And they've only allowed 27 runs in their last 10 games, which is remarkable, seeing as how they allowed 52 in the first 6 games of the season. And I feel like this is something that we should talk about as like a good thing for the White Sox, obviously, when you're only allowing 2.7 runs per game. And like the point that you were making when we're talking about Noah Schultz, Jim, when you're looking at the White Sox pitchers, it's Eric Fetty holding strong. Davis Martin is off to a fantastic start. I think if more MLB teams actually believe that Anthony Kay could throw 96, 97 miles an hour, he probably doesn't sign with the White Sox and has a better deal. But it's these 3, knowing that Shane Smith is now in AAA, the White Sox having to lean on Grant Taylor to open games. And they're able to, in the last 10 games, really hold down the fort from a run allowance standpoint. That is what's really impressing me and catching my eye, that after a really bad start to the year, 1-5 and going 5-5 in your last 10, if they can maintain this level of pitching as far as the results, then maybe, just maybe, if the offense ever does pick up, that's where it can be a lot of fun being a White Sox fan, where then they can start surprising some teams. Because right now they're 6-10. They're in last place in the American League Central. We'll talk about this later in the show. But at this stage, it's 16 games of the season, Jim, that they're only 1 game back at the Detroit Tigers. I feel good about that. Coming out of Kansas City with the series split, I feel good about that. And with the new pitching coach, but you still have Brian Bannister, old friends, new friends, the longest 10-year guy still performing well. I feel I'm strangely feeling more and more confident in the White Sox pitching abilities, and now you add Noah Schultz, than I did before the season. How are you feeling now about the way that the White Sox are pitching in the last 10 games?
Hard to separate the success and the, I guess, superficial or surface level stats versus like the quality of offenses and it being April and the weather being a little bit wonky.
Sure.
Like the Blue Jays, Orioles, Royals are all bottom 10 offenses in terms of runs scored. Blue Jays are banged up. The Royals are, they're frustrating their fans a lot right now with the way they've looked. You watch the way that, I'd say like K right now, I think the bigger question to me is, can he throw this hard over the course of a full season? Because I think if he's throwing 96, if he's averaging like 95, if he's topping out at 98, that guy plays on better rosters than this one. If it comes around like to May, June, and he's all of a sudden like averaging 92, 93, then we'll see what kind of, whether it has to be more crafty lefty kitchen sinky in terms of getting hitters out. But he jumps out. Davis Martin, his job is just get outs, and so far he's doing that. Eric Fetty, he's the one where I look at his stuff and think like, he kind of got off to a decent start with the Cardinals and then kind of all fell apart as the weather got warmer. So I'm on guard against him. But I think when it came to the composition of this pitching staff, especially with Fetty and K, K was like a plan A, Fetty was like a fifth starter, but like with Jonathan Cannon not looking viable, all of a sudden like that immediate major league depth might not be there. And then you have to dip into your prospect well. The fact that Fetty can even look good for a few starts, look good for a month, he's basically there to buy the White Sox time for Schultz, for now Shane Smith they have to buy time for because of how he started the season. Hagen Smith, McDougal, but he's there to buy time and he's buying time. So thumbs up, his contract is more or less pass fail versus grading A to F. And right now he's passing because he's starting games or he's being the bulk man in games and it's fine. What you paid for is fine and he's giving you fine. So great. I'm still, hesitant about what it looks like when the weather warms up, but the weather isn't warm yet. So they'll cross that bridge when they get to it. They have other plans in mind should that happen. So I think the plan for me would be to just take this rotation as far as it'll go. And then as pieces start falling off it, like as the shuttle starts reaching atmospheres and parts are falling off it back into the atmosphere, then you start looking at what's left and then who's in AAA to supplement that.
Nice space shuttle, especially with Artemis too in the news. Nice analogy, Jim. Well done. It's funny when you go to baseballreference.com and you look at the White Sox stats and you look at ERA plus and you're seeing big numbers. It's just 3 starts, 3 games for a lot of these guys. But Davis Martin, 177 ERA plus. Eric Fetty, 131. Sean Burke, 123. And Anthony Kay, 181. After 3 starts, Davis Martin, Anthony Kay lead the White Sox in WAR. Davis Martin's already at 0.7. Anthony Kay's at 0.6. All 4 of these guys have an ERA at 3.60 or below. And I think that's been a huge factor, and we'll talk about the offense in a moment. But now that you add Noah Schultz into this mix, and let's say Schultz has a fast start, it just feels like it buys time for the White Sox, if they're pitching this well over the next month, Jim, to figure out how in the world can you rebuild this offense on the fly, as far as like with call-ups or aiming for guys on the waiver wire. We've seen White Sox teams like this in the past where pitching has been the strength and it's aggravating because they just cannot scrape enough runs to really support a stellar pitching staff. But as far as the direction or the near direction for this team, this is where I'm generating hope now, which is weird to say at game 16, because boy, at game 6, I was incredibly worried about the White Sox pitching staff, Jim.
Yeah, I think Kyle Teal will have a big say in it. Austin Hayes having,
as in impacting the White Sox pitching,
in
or
terms
helping
of
to
like
make better
the offense and making that a more viable thing. Right now, I think you're thinking you're missing, if not the best hitter, maybe your best bet for most consistent or more consistent impact production. I think Montgomery and Murakami with their contact issues are always going to run hot and cold. Vargas, he has professional at bats, but sometimes like the power just isn't there. I think Teal was your best bet for having enough hit tool to go with his power, especially like in the right ballpark, to where you feel his presence in the lineup more often than, at least on a more regular basis than the others. And the fact that he isn't around right now, it does feel like they're missing something like that. Austin Hayes also having the better form of hamstring strain, then we'll see whether he's able to convert on that optimistic timeline, because Teal was pretty optimistic and looks like he's going to be at the back end of that window, the recovery window. No. So they always talk a big game until they have to start running. And or I shouldn't say big game, but just they want to, mind over matter, the whole thing. And then it doesn't quite, the body doesn't quite allow it. And then they have to abide by the bounds of human recovery and time. So yeah, I think right now Schultz coming in just to keep the ERAs low and keep the White Sox in games while they try to platoon and pinch run and bunt and run themselves into innings and hopefully not out of innings. Seems like the game plan.
So let's move over to the offense, which is clearly bad. There's no other way to describe the White Sox offense. For the players that have played at least 10 games this season, 10 out of the 16 games for the White Sox, only 2 hitters have an OPS above 700, and that is Colson Montgomery and Munetaka Murakami. However, for Montgomery, it's a 200 batting average with a 302 on base percentage, slugging 418. Murakami is batting 157 with a 323 on base percentage and slugging 392. Murakami's walking. He's got 13 walks, but he only has 8 hits on the season. Mydrot's got an OPS below 600. He's batting 196. Miguel Vargas is batting 180. He's got a 663 OPS. Luis Angel Acuna has a 420 OPS. That's not good. Andrew Benintendi has got an OPS below 500. And that's really what's, I think, hurting the White Sox offense. And just like watching it this weekend, there's just times where I'm rubbing my forehead, Jim, and wanting to ask the questions to like Derek Showman and the coaching staff that's helping out with the hitters. Like, what are they doing to prepare? Like, what is the game plan? What's the approach here? Murakami is clearly in between right now, and what I think are very hittable fastballs in the strike zone. He is not swinging at them, or he's swinging very late on them because it looks like he's looking for breaking stuff, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I thought Colson Montgomery's swing decisions were much better on Sunday, but the previous 3 games, I get very frustrated watching him because I think he's letting too many pitches in the strike zone go by him without, he's just not aggressive enough on those types of pitches. So for me, there's a part of me that like approach is an issue for the regulars. But I also think that there is just a lack of talent right now for the White Sox, especially the bottom part of the order to be a consistent offense. When you look at the White Sox offense, Jim, what do you think is the biggest issue that they're dealing with right now?
I think it's talent by and large, or lineup depth, I should say. They kind of run out of hitters in a hurry. We've seen that. We've talked about that plenty over the years. I think I look at hitters I have expectations for versus guys who are trying to make the most of an opportunity that they might not get all that often. Like I would say Tanner Murray's in that. Actually, Tanner Murray should be up and down. Like I've likened him to Danny Mendick, and sure enough, he hits a homer against the lefty. Like that's very Danny Mendick-like. And yeah, on the right roster, he serves a purpose, especially when he's stashed in Charlotte and comes up during injury, and you don't mind having him around. Make some fun videos. Doesn't make too many mistakes. All right. Good for him. So I think like Murray's fine. But in terms of like the Dustin Harris, Tristan Peters, even like Luis Angel Acuna, even though he's out of options, he's in this kind of fringe role as well in terms of getting opportunity that can't really let you slip by. Those are the ones where you don't really have expectations for, at least when I'm watching them. I think where I guess the hitter I'm watching to kind of set my barometer for what's this pitcher doing to him is Chase Mydroth, just because he should be the one with the longest at bats, and he should be the one making contact and putting the ball into play. And even if he's not slugging like he was, immediately out of the gates, should be line drives, finding some gaps, putting the barrel of the ball, and ultimately being a productive hitter. I think in the ideal lineup, he is batting 8th or 9th and turning the lineup over versus batting at the top of the order, but he can occasionally do that. And right now he's looked really rough as well. And it seems like he's expanding, or they're sequencing him differently to where he's, taking the kind of hacks that you don't often see. That's the one where I look at and kind of scratch my head, because I think Colson's going to run hot and cold because of his contact issues. Murakami, same thing. But Mydroth is the one where he looked out of sorts, and so maybe it is either an information thing or, during the Bubich start, I thought like, are they taking, is it the lighting? Is it the late afternoon start causing weird shadow or something like that? Because the swings are just very in between, very late. Some late chases on breaking balls, like they weren't recognizing spin, it seemed, especially when it was up in the zone and you kind of hanging looking. I'm curious, and I think James is writing something about this, just what the takeaways is from like how the swings looked versus what the swings are actually doing.
Yeah, it's not a very encouraging 16 games to the season for this White Sox offense, especially with how they ended last year. But Will Venable, the manager of the White Sox, made it very clear this is a brand new season. He's also trying to stay optimistic, telling Murakami, just look around, offenses around Major League Baseball. It's down early. Hitters are trying to find their rhythm. Do not be dismayed with how Murakami is starting this season. I'm wondering if it is bugging him a little bit. He hit those first 3 games of the season. He had home runs. His first game at home, he hit a home run, but it hasn't been much since other than just walks from Murakami. So hopefully things snap out of this funk for the White Sox offense, but they really could use a spark, Jim. And that brings up the topic of Sam Antonacci. So with the White Sox calling up Noah Schultz and with how well Antonacci has been hitting in Charlotte, knowing that the White Sox could really use some run support unless Noah Schultz knows how to win games of a score of 0 to -1, when do you think someone like Sam Antonacci could join the White Sox and hopefully be a spark to the offense?
The rumor kind of surprised me after the Schultz news came out, and then we published a post on Schultz, and then afterwards the report about Antonacci joining him on his debut comes out, and it's like, wasn't expecting that one just because, for a couple of reasons. It's nothing about his production. I think in terms of how he's hitting and how he looks in AAA, I think he's close to a finished form offensively, or at least how he's going to look as a prospect this season. But defensively, there have been, getting exposure in the outfield, running to some plays that he hadn't encountered from the other side. Like there's nearly a collision with Dustin Harris in center. There was a collision with William Bergoya in shallow left. And I think actually Antonacci did try to get out of the way of that one. It's not like he barreled into him, but still, he talked, when I talked about his outfield transition in Nashville, he was just talking about how all these things were new, especially the full speed nature of it, and running full tilt in the way that you don't often do in the infield. Like as an infielder, you're usually parking under pop-ups and getting called off versus the guy booking it, trying to get somewhere. So, he's learning the finer points of that. So you have the outfield play, which I think he's still working on. And then I think just the shape of his offense and how much of his impact is reliant on other hitters performing, I think is another reason why I think it seems a little bit early. I think, like, if we're talking about Braden Montgomery a year from now, and he looks like his prospect form, somebody strikes out a little bit too much, but hits the ball really hard, and switch hitter, and both swings might work, and he might play good right field. Like he's a guy I would call up in this offense because they could use the homers, and they could use the defense in the outfield. And then, if you get a steady on base presence as well, that's cool. But if there are some ups and downs, you can work with that. With Antonacci, like he gets on base. I think the question is, how many extra base hits will he have? I think the power boost is real, but against Major League pitching, will it not show up as often as it has so far? And then, he has to get on base, and he has to run around the bases and you have people move him, even though he tries to take every extra base possible himself. And I think that just could be mitigated by Major League defenses in a way that, minor league defenses haven't done as much, especially when the offense isn't doing much behind him. So I think calling him up and trying to generate excitement and then realize like, oh, he gets the first base, but getting the other 270 feet is a problem based on the shape of this offense. Then all of a sudden the kind of enthusiasm wears off and he's kind of dragged into everything else versus somebody who's a very good complementary player, but has nothing to complement. That's kind of where I'm at with him. So I think I would like to see him called up when the offense is a little bit healthier, so he can play his game versus have to be somebody he might not be, especially as a rookie at the majors.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So it still needs to work on the outfield defense. Don't hurt anyone. Who knows? Maybe if you give Chase Maindroth a couple more weeks and Maindroth is still hitting this poorly, you could just have Antonacci play one of his natural positions in the infield and be at second base if you need to pull Maindroth and send him to Arizona to work on some things to get him back on track. It's only been 13 games in AAA for Antonacci. He's batting .289, .484 on base percentage, slugging .444. He's got 15 walks to 7 strikeouts. So he's doing well. As Jim mentioned, getting on base. He's already got 5 stolen bases this year. He's got 2 homers and 7 RBIs, but only 1 double. So it's not a lot of double power for Antonacci. Out of his 13 hits, 10 of them have been singles. So maybe just need Antonacci to bake a little bit longer before the White Sox call him up and see if he can truly be a spark to the offense. But somebody in this lineup, as well as the pitching has been going the last 10 games, in the next 10 games, if the White Sox continue to pitch this well, but the offense continues to be sputtering here, it could be... it could be one big sigh heading to the month of May, Jim.
Nothing we haven't seen
Nothing
before.
we've never seen before, but we were hoping to see a little bit more offense than this from the White Sox, and hopefully that does happen against the Tampa Bay Rays. Typically do during the regular season, we check out everything else that's going on in Major League Baseball. And I'll start here, Jim, because I want to get your thoughts of just like how the other teams are performing. But especially in the American League, it feels like a packed peloton. The White Sox are 6-10, and you can say they have the worst record in the American League, and that is true. But they are tied with the Houston Astros. And that's a surprise. The New York Yankees have just lost 5 straight games. The Minnesota Twins have to feel great. They've won 7 of their last 10, but they're 9-7. So are the Cleveland Guardians. The Rangers and Athletics lead the West with an 8-7 record. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this feels like a packed peloton. Nobody's really pulled away. It's not like the National League where the Dodgers are already 11-4, and you know they're just going to continue riding that wave throughout the regular season and have the number 1 seed. That's the expectation in LA. But when you look at the American League, Jim, is there truly a great team in this league, or is the best that they're going to be able to do is a very good team, and we'll see what the chaos happens in the postseason?
I think that's probably closer to it. I think we'll see what the AL East shapes up to be. I think the Blue Jays having the kind of injuries they've had early on hurts I think the strength of the league. They tried to get better after coming so close to winning the World Series last year. That's what you want to see him. You'd like to see him in terms of as a baseball fan, wanting to see great teams and teams build upon success and really capitalize on that kind of momentum and energy for a fan base, and just not being able to do it because of injuries. That cost them one. The Yankees didn't really do a whole lot in the offseason. They kind of more or less stood pat in their high, or big money way, but they still they didn't really provide the roster shaping move that would give them a different look. So they're more or less the same. The Rays are tied with them despite a negative run differential. So the Rays are raising. I think the Mariners, another team that started slowly, but they, Ichiro broke his bat in the statue unveiling and they haven't lost since. I think the Astros are one where they have 4 pitchers now in the starting pitchers on the injured list. Hunter Brown, Javier, Imai, and then they just lost Cody Bolton. So it's like they've lost 7 in a row. And while it's early, it's also just, how can you replace 4 pitchers this early, especially if they have significant injuries? That's one where the team that had good postseason odds all of a sudden isn't there. And then that allows room for it to get weird and this kind of middle class of the American League to rise up and kind of muddle the wild card races. Yeah, it could be messy.
So that's what's catching my attention, is just how this season has started for the American League. after 16 games. What's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
Yeah, I think I kind of cover it with the Astros, just the amount of the body count that they're suffering through right now. Also, I think the Twins off to a good start, especially since we thought they might be the last place team, and they still might. Like it's early. Tristan Gray providing a lot of firepower for them. Never appeared in a game for the White Sox and is maybe gonna let them have it. So when they meet up, but given that they cut payroll and had this weird ownership thing and a lot of disenchanted people and a leadership transition, everything like that in the dugouts, I think there's a recipe for disaster. But on the other hand, thinking about it, like I wasn't that big of a fan of Rocco Baldelli and thought he was just kind of there for too long, despite not being a great problem solver. And so maybe having Derek Shelton there, you kind of get that bump from just having somebody different and competent in charge. Because I think Shelton, hard to distinguish yourself with the Pirates, but he had a little bit of staying power there and some personality and experience. And so maybe that's enough to get a team, kind of like we saw with the White Sox with Robin Ventura. Like Ventura ended up showing he was not a good manager, but early on, just because he was trying to address things that had really disintegrated over the course of like the last 2 years of Ozzie Guillen's tenure, that they got a boost just because of that. And I think something similar could be happening with Baldelli being there for so long and just having this underwhelming brand of success that they had to be considered acceptable by the front office, especially at the ownership level with the way they cut payroll, that perhaps they are getting a little bit of a boost. Just this a decent credible major league manager, even if he is more replacement level than an all-star, might offer something. And then maybe they have that why not us as well, or just nobody believes in us because nobody does believe in us, especially when you look at the attendance figures that they had. Like they could play that card because even ownership wasn't investing in them. So for multiple levels, if they are a little bit motivated by being ruled out or being considered underpowered, then good for them. But then again, Royce Lewis I think is on the injured list again, so pieces could fall off here in short order, and they're back to being this team that just is more or less, they have strengths, but the strengths never line up into something cohesive.
Yeah, Taj Bradley has been pitching really well for the Minnesota Twins. 4 starts this year, 1.25 ERA. He's already 3-0. He's got 29 strikeouts to 8 walks and 21 2/3 innings. That's been one of the surprises for the Minnesota Twins. We'll see if that continues for the Twins going into the second half of this month. But for White Sox fans, with them being 6-10 after 1-5 starts, so they're 5-5 in their last 10, treading water doesn't feel all that bad. And now let's see what Noah Schultz could do on Tuesday. Let's see if the White Sox hit a little bit better in this upcoming home series, and then heading to Sacramento to face the Athletics over the weekend. We'll see where the White Sox are in a week. But I'm feeling a little bit better about the run prevention side, but I think we can all agree it'd be nice to see a lot more offense in the next 6 games.
Yeah, if the games are over in 2 hours or less, then at least they're not wasting your time.
That is true. If you're going to be bad, make it quick. That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. Check out our videos as well. We have post-game press conferences. We've got interviews and breaking news as well. Some more content on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, and the upcoming Major League Baseball draft, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at SoxMachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. That gets you the ad-free version with the podcast and the website. Also unlocks the comment section for you too. We also have a $10 a month plan. Our 10 WAR team gets a chance to participate in PO Sox, and our 25 WAR and our Veterans Committee, well, we host monthly Zoom calls with them and our VC members get to be part of the group chat, have direct access to both Jim and James, especially very handy when all the news was coming in about Noah Schultz over the weekend. If you want more from us, you can get more from us. Again, go to soxmachine.com/products and sign up today. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of soxmachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.